Hey, what's good? It's that time. Doing my NFL predictions. Let's get into it. Starting us off with the Buffalo Bills. Now they're starting us off with the Ravens. I think that they will lose that game. Then they're gonna play the Jets. They will win. They will beat the Dolphins. They will beat the Saints. They will beat the Patriots. Um, yeah. Now they're 5-1 going into their bye. They'll beat the Panthers. They'll beat the Chiefs. So they're 7-1, 8-1, 9-1. They just have but as they are, I think 11-1, they go to play the Bengals. Now they're 11-2. They're and I think they just lose a couple games that they could easily win, like the Patriots and the Browns, and then they go out and beat the Eagles, and that leaves the Bills at a record of 13-4. Now it's time for the Patriots. They will lose week 1 to the Raiders. They'll also lose week 2. They will lose week 3. They will also lose week 4, so going 0-5, but they will beat the Saints. I think the Saints are going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. They will beat the Titans. They will beat the Browns. They're going to lose to the Falcons. They go and play the Bucks. I'm just making sure it doesn't close out itself. No, they're not beating the Bucks. I'm crazy. They'll beat the Jets, I think. They're gonna lose to the Bengals, and so they have 4 wins. So that's 4-9, I think. Yeah, and then that's 5-9. They're gonna obviously lose to the Ravens. Means 5-10, 5-11, and I think they will beat the Dolphins in their last game. So the Patriots will go 6-11. Okay, now it's time for the New York Jets. Their first game is the Steelers, which I think they're gonna win. They're gonna lose to the Bills. They'll lose to the Bucks. I think they will beat the Dolphins. They're gonna lose to the Cowboys, lose to the Broncos, beat the Panthers, lose to the Bengals. They'll beat the Browns. 2, 4. I'm sorry, guys. They will lose to the Ravens. They'll beat the Falcons. They will lose to the Dolphins. Now they will beat the Jags. They will beat the Saints, and that leaves a record of 8-9 for the Jets. Now it's time for the Miami Dolphins. I think they will beat the Colts. They will beat the Patriots, lose to the Bills, lose to the Jets. So then 2-0, then 2-2. Let's check that's in close. All right. They will beat the Panthers. They will beat the Chargers. They will beat the Browns. They will beat the Falcons. They will beat the Ravens. Hear me out. The Ravens always lose to the Dolphins. They could be in the best position, but the Dolphins always find a way to beat them, every single time. And they will lose to the Bills. They're playing in a different country this week, so I think they're gonna lose that game though. I think the Saints might be the first 0-17 team. They're so bad. Alright, they're gonna beat the Steelers. They're gonna lose to the Bengals. They're gonna lose to the Bucks. And that leaves Miami with a 10-7 record. Okay, now it's time for the Houston Texans. First they're playing the Rams, which they will not win. They will not win against the Bucks. I think the Jags actually beat them, but only once this year. they lose to the Titans. I just think they have a rough start to their year. But they will get a couple of wins. Going down here now. I think that's 3-6. Okay, then that's 4-7. Okay, the Colts are gonna be awful. If the Saints play the Colts, it's gonna be a crap match. No, they're not beating the Chiefs. They will lose to the Cardinals. They will beat the Raiders. They'll beat the Chargers, and they'll beat the Colts. So it gives them a record of 8-9. Now it's time for the Jaguars. Now this is probably a very bad matchup, but I'll take the Jags in that one. Give me the Bengals, 2-1. They're not gonna beat the 49ers. They're gonna lose to the Chiefs. They're gonna even lose to the Seahawks. A different country, they're not gonna beat the Rams. So that means they're going to be 2-5 going into the bye week. They will also lose to the Raiders, going 2-6. They will go 2-7, 2-8, 2-9, 2-10. They're gonna go 3-10 right there though, because the Colts absolutely stink. The Jaguars. This is going to be a tough match, but I'll take the Broncos. And then they'll win their final 2 games, which gives them a 5-12 record. Okay, now it's time for the Titans. I think they actually will be maybe a decent team this year, because they actually have a competent quarterback. They'll lose their first 2 games before then beating an awful team and then beating an average one. Then they'll lose to a slightly under average one. Then they will lose to the Raiders. And they will lose to the Patriots, but then they'll beat an awful team. 4-5. And they're gonna go 4-6 there. And they'll go 5-6. And they go 6-6. Now, them playing the Browns, even though I do not think the Browns are really good this year, I think they will actually win that game. They'll obviously lose to the Niners. They'll lose to the Chiefs. And they'll beat the Saints, which gives them a record of 7-10. Now it's time for the Colts. They have horrible quarterbacks, and I think they're going to absolutely stink this year. And, yeah, this is, yeah. I think you already know where this is going, guys. Until they play Atlanta. Atlanta always looks like they're going to win a game, and then they don't. So I think that maybe their one and only win. And yeah, that leaves them a record of 1-16. So the Texans at 8-9 win this awful division. Now it's time for the AFC West. The Chiefs. They'll start by winning. It's gonna be like a pattern, like if you know what I mean. Until these 2 games, and they will lose to the Bills. And after getting a couple of wins, then they'll lose to Broncos, and I think that gives them a record of 12-5. Now it's time for the Denver Broncos, who I think might actually win their division this year. Then they will unfortunately beat my Giants. Lose to the Cowboys. Beat the Raiders. Lose to the Chiefs. This one's going to be a good match, but I think the Commanders will beat them. After winning a couple more of games, I think they closed it out winning 5 games in a row. And that gives them 1 game under the Chiefs. Now the Las Vegas Raiders, I think they'll just be in mid-team, but here we go into the prediction. They will win week 1. for them losing week 2, losing week 3, losing week 4, then winning week 6, losing week 7, and then the bye week is week 8. Okay, they will lose to the Cowboys, lose to the Browns, they will beat the Chargers, then lose to the Broncos, and lose to the Eagles, and then lose to my Giants, which gives them a record of 5-12 this season. Now it's time for the Chargers, who I do not think will be a good team, as they will go 1-4, and 1-3, then 1-4, 1-5, 2-5. Then they will go. They might beat the Vikings. Yeah, they will beat the Vikings. Then they're playing the Steelers, who they will lose to. Then they will beat the Jaguars. They will lose to the Raiders, then lose to the Eagles, then lose to the Chiefs. They will beat the Cowboys for them losing their final 2 games, which also gives them the same record of 5-12, which makes the Chiefs win the division. And now time for one last division. Now it's time for the Bengals. The Browns, listen. The Browns always seem to beat them in week 1. Like, the Bengals just don't exist in week 1. But then they pick up a couple of wins before then losing another game to the Lions and then dropping a game to the Packers. Like, they always got a rocky start. But then they pick up the pace. See? Win. They'll lose to the Ravens. I don't think they'll beat the Ravens this year. But I think I have them beating the Bills. Then winning their last 2 games, which gives them a record of 11-6. Yeah, they always start off rocky, but then finish out with a banger. Now the Baltimore Ravens, who I think will be absolutely a dog. I think they just go crazy this year. Like, there's not that much to say to it, which hold on. What was the game that I didn't predict? Oh, this one. They will lose to the Steelers once, though, and that gives them a record of 13-4. Okay, Pittsburgh. I think they'll have, like, kind of a mid-year like they always do. Right? They have 2 wins there. 3-1, 4-1, 5-1. Like, yeah, the Steelers, they always, like, same thing, like, with the Dolphins and the Ravens, they find a way. Sorry. They'll beat the Bears. They'll lose to the Lions. And then beat the Browns, then lose to the Ravens, which gives them a record of also 11-6. Which means the Browns, I kind of feel sorry for them, like, Jesus. They'll win week 1 because they always beat the Bengals once a year. Then lose to the Ravens, lose to the Packers, lose to the Lions, lose to the Vikings, and lose to the Niners, even lose to the Bears. And that gives them a record of 4-13. So they're the only one that will not make the playoffs. So the AFC playoff bracket is the Bengals are the 7th seed, the Steelers are the 6th seed. And then the 5 seed, who's the 5 seed? Then the Broncos are the 5 seed. The 4 seed are the Texans at 8-9. The 3 seed is the Chiefs at 12-5. 2 seed is the Bills at 13-4, and the Ravens are also 13-4, getting that number 1 seed once again. All right, now time to move over to the NFC, starting off with the Los Angeles Rams. I do think they will beat the Niners. I think they will actually sweep the Niners this year, because the Niners are washed. Yeah, but they will drop a couple of games that they could easily win, for then beating the last 3 teams that they play, giving them a record of 12-5 this year. Okay, then now the San Francisco 49ers, who I think have a pretty record. I even have them losing to the Saints, which says something, but then they will pick up the pace a little bit. But then they lose to my Giants. They lose to the Cardinals. And they beat the Panthers. but then winning their last 2 games, which gives them a record of 10-7. Still a winning record. Now the Cardinals. I think that the Cardinals actually have a chance this year. Starting with a couple of winnable games, even beating the Niners and beating the Seahawks, which gives them like a 6-0 start. But like in 2021, they start 6-0 and then they drop a game to the Packers. Then they lose a couple of games, but then they win 2. And that gives them a record of... Oh, wait, hold on. Where's the game I didn't predict? This one. They'll beat the Falcons. 11-6 for the Cardinals. I know this might seem like a biasism, but I think they might be a little good this year, but despite that video I did. Now the Seahawks. I think they even lose to the Saints. They will lose to the Commanders. They will beat the Vikings, beat the Falcons, lose to the Panthers even. And then they will lose to the Bucks. 6-11 for Seattle. So the Rams will win at 12-5, Cardinals 11-6, Niners 10-7, and then the Seahawks at 6-11. Now going to the NFC South, and I still think the Bucks run the division. I think they even beat the Eagles. Wait, no, they don't beat the Eagles. So excuse me. I do think they absolutely run the division this year. But I do have them dropping a game to the Panthers, which gives them a record of 12-5. And I think they easily do win the division. The Panthers might fight a little bit this year. I do have them beating the Falcons once. They didn't drop a game to the Cowboys. Lose to the Packers. They lose to the Saints. Then they beat the Panthers again. Oh, wait, no, they lose to the Falcons. I'm predicting the Panthers. They can't lose to themselves. Then they beat the Saints again, giving them a record of 6-11, which is actually really good for them. And now it's time for the Saints, who I think are going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. And a lot of them I think a lot of these games just spell it out for you. You know what I mean, guys? This team is not a good team. They go 3-14. Now it's time for the Falcons. And I just think they lose a lot of winnable games. That's the Falcons' way. And they go 5-12. And so the Bucks easily win the division. I think they run the division for at least another 3 years before maybe the Falcons or Panthers will be good, but the Saints are going to be gone for a while. Now it's time for arguably the toughest division to predict, the NFC East. Now, hold on. Did I have them beating the Chiefs? No, that's a freaking misclick. Well, that gives the Chiefs the 1 seed. I misclicked and I had us beating the Chiefs. No, I did not mean to do that. Okay, so we go 2-4, 2-5. We go 2-6, but then we go on a little bit of a winning streak before dropping another game. Then we win these 2, and then the final decider between us and the Cowboys. Now look, the Cowboys have beat us almost 4 years in a row, but I finally have us overshadowing them and going 9-8. Now it's time for the Cowboys. Arguably the most cursed team. They do win a couple of games. They go 3-3, then they drop a game to the Commanders. And they go 5-4, 6-4, 6-5, 6-6, 6-7, then they go 7-7. I just think that it's not your year, not at all. This schedule is a tough one. And I think you will go 7-10 this season. Now the Commanders, I think they will... Hold on, let me see if we're still going. Yep, we are. I think they were going to have a pretty good season this year. Despite dropping a couple of games, like this easy one of the Vikings. I do think they will be a great team this year, even sweeping the Eagles. That gives them a record of 13-4. Now, time for the Eagles. Arguably another better team, and I think they started off 9-0 before then dropping a game to the Lions, winning a couple and then dropping their last 3, which also gives them the same record. And the Commanders win the division. Now it's time for our final division in the Detroit in the NFC North. Okay, that they started off 2-0, then they lose to the Ravens, then they win 2 games. I just think they're a really good football team. But they do drop their last 2. I think they're resting people by that point. You see, then they go 14-3 this year. The Packers. Second, guys. I'm back. Right, and they're gonna I still think that the Bears are owned by the Packers. And so are the Vikings. Leaving the Packers with a 10-7 record. Right, now it's time for the Chicago Bears, which there's only 2 games to predict. It's both of their games against the Vikings. I think that it will be a split series. Alright, and here is my prediction. Just so you can see the Vikings prediction record. There you go. Now, let's see. Now, let's predict my playoffs. Alright, here is my playoff bracket. Here is where the long parts come in. Now, I'm going to start with the AFC side. The 11-6 Broncos versus the 8-9 Texans. Now, obviously, I think the Broncos are going to win, but look. The only reason that the Texans are here is because these 3 teams suck. So yes. Now, real explaining. 11-6 Steelers versus 13-4 Cowboys. The Cowboys, Bills, sorry. Now, look, this game is a real toss-up. Like, last year, did they play each other, or was that 2023? Was that 2023, or was that last? I don't know, but they played each other in Buffalo before. The Steelers, I don't know if they're starting Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers, but they always find a way to get in the playoff picture somehow. But I do not think they make it past the first round when they're playing the Bills again. Sorry. Now, arguably the toughest match, even for a 7-2, the Bengals and the Ravens. It really just comes down to who plays better, Joe Burrow or Lamar. But they're in Baltimore. The Ravens have the upper hand. But the Bengals could obviously win this game. But I do think the Ravens move on to the next round. Now, the NFC. The Eagles at the Rams. This game could go either way. But the Eagles do have one more win than the Rams do. But it's in Los Angeles, so they each have an advantage over each other. I do think it'll be like a 2-point game, whoever wins. But the Eagles beat them last year, so I think the Rams take revenge and knock the Rams out. Now the 6-seed Cardinals at the 3-seed Bucks. Bucks have almost every advantage over the Cardinals in this game. The Cardinals are a huge underdog this year. So I think their run comes to an end, but it was a very good one. Now, the Packers, the 10-7 Packers at the 13-4 Commanders. I think the Commanders obliterate them. But it's another reason because, like, the Packers keep getting the 7 seed. Like, they just keep sneaking in. Like, they won in 2023. Like, I'm not saying the 7 seed's a bad thing. It's a great thing. But I just don't think. The 7 seed's there. It's just not meant for, like, the bright lights, you know? Alright, now time for the divisional round. And look at these games. Perfection. Now, the Bills at the Ravens. Last time it was Ravens at Bills. Now it's Bills at Ravens. This game might be the game of the year, to be honest. Like, look at this. The Bills at Ravens. That's game of the year. I'm predicting this AFC divisional round, Bills at Ravens, to be game of the year. But I personally think that the Bills beat the Ravens again. Now, the Broncos at the Chiefs. Now, look, hear me out. just because the Chiefs are the 1 seed doesn't mean they win every game. But the Chiefs always get in to the AFC Championship, but the Broncos may put an end to it, but I don't see it happening. Maybe next year they win the division and obviously maybe stop the Chiefs, but I'm going to have them winning and playing the Bills in the AFC Championship game again. Now, the NFC. The Buccaneers at Commanders. This is going to be a great game. Like, imagine the most points you could ever imagine for a game, and I had like 25. But I think the Commanders will win this offensive matchup. Now, the Rams and Lions, I think the Lions obviously blow by the Rams, but a few reasons why, because they have a much better offense and they're just a better team overall than the Rams. Now, the conference rounds, the Bills and Chiefs and the Commanders and Lions. Both teams played last year. The Commanders and the Chiefs won. Now look, do you think the Bills finally beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, or do they get knocked out by them for the third year in a row? Like, I want to pick the Bills, but the Chiefs always beat them, and no matter what, and they're playing in Missouri. It's both of them could win this game. But I'm sorry, I think I'm going to have to edge towards the Chiefs beating them once again. Now the Commanders at Lions. It's going to be a great game. The Commanders knocked them out, but I think the Lions tear them apart for revenge. Now the Super Bowl. Both of the 1 seeds, the Lions and Chiefs. Both teams are really great. Will the Chiefs win? Well, they already got the title for the AFC again. Or will the Lions making their first Super Bowl win? I think the Detroit Lions are your 2025 Super Bowl champions. See ya. Please like.